Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss It Happened One Night, starring Clark Gable, Claudette Colbert, Walter Connolly, Roscoe Carnes, and Jameson Thomas, directed by Frank Capra. Welcome back, sir, after Mr. Smith goes to Washington, I meant to say. I'm sorry. And I'm in territory, with an exception of Annie, the 1982 version, where I haven't seen any of these movies, except for maybe the 1982 Annie. But I will say I'm kind of new to this volume, so let's get straight into it. We start on a boat where Ellie Andrews for short, played by Claudette Colbert, doesn't want to be married to her husband King Wesley, played by Jameson Thomas, as she wants off the boat while they try to make her eat, but she doesn't want to eat and she jumps in the water out of the boat. And we move on to Peter Warren, played by Clark Gable, on the phone with his boss at a newspaper joint, and he gets fired from his job as he goes to the bus to New York, and he throws the newspapers out the window, and Ellie sits next to Peter, as they don't like each other at first, but they'll grow to love each other, as this is probably great filmmaking to a great romance movie at its finest. Ellie's bags go missing from a thief, and he tries to report it to the bus driver, but she doesn't want it reported because she's a runaway wife. And they get back to the bus and arrive in Jacksonville, and they stop for breakfast for 30 minutes, and Peter tells her she's going to be to a rich hotel, as she comes back and the bus is gone, and Ellie is stuck with Peter as he got off with her, and she wants to pay him, but he's not interested in her money. But it's a little hypocritical because he sends Ellie's father, Alexander, played by Walter Connolly, a message about where she's at while she waits for 12 hours to get to the next bus to New York, and sits next to a talkative weirdo, Peter, until Peter comes in to pretend to be Ellie's wife because his voice got on his nerves. And I like these two as a couple, and I hope they get together by the end of the movie. The bus makes a stop, and Peter and Ellie go to a motel to stay for the night because it's pouring like crazy, and he's not interested in falling in love with her, as he wants a story about Ellie and why she's a runaway wife, and he hangs her clothes to dry, and he changes in front of her, and the editing did feel a little off when she moved from one place to the next. But the writing in this is very good, and the acting is well done by Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. The next day comes, and we see Alexander on a plane with her assistant as Peter and Ellie wake up for the day. And Peter faces Ellie out of the bed on the count of 10, and she goes in the shower. And as she's there, she sees there's a line, and she waits in it like everybody else. And as she gets out, the annoying guy comes up to Ellie and annoys the daylights out of her. And she comes back to the room with donuts and an egg for breakfast and black coffee for the day. And there were times the movie was making me laugh in a ha-ha kind of way, as this movie was funny at times. Alexander shows up at the motel with some policemen as he's looking for Ellie, and Peter acts all abusive with Ellie, and they pretend to be a married couple and laugh about it at the end of it, as three they get a reminder about the bus leaving in 5 minutes, and they pack up quickly off screen while the newspaper shows she's still missing. And the annoying guy finds out that he's seen Ellie before, while some people sing some songs for their entertainment, while the bus driver also sings, and while having his eyes on the road, until they stop in a puddle of water, and a little boy's mother is knocked out and hangs out with Peter, as the little boy is now worried, and Ellie brings him back to his mother, and the annoying guy chats with him, as his name is Oscar Shapley, and is played by Roscoe Carnes, as he knows too much, and Oscar will keep his trap shut, which means he'll keep his mouth shut and abandons the bus, and so does Peter and Ellie, and hide in the woods. While I'm having a good time with this romance, as they have chemistry, as it was beautiful to watch Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert on screen, Peter and Ellie decide to sleep in the woods while Ellie is hungry and scared for her life, as he snaps at her about it while she's still talking and trying to annoy the bejesus out of him, as he got her food for her, but she doesn't want it anymore, which could get under my skin, but in life, I'll say. But this movie proves that it's a great romantic comedy with a story. They hitchhike in the middle of the road while Ellie sits down and she talks, to the point they get distracted and miss a car passing by, and he shows her how to hitchhike as he practices a few until she tries and does the leg thing, which is the most iconic scene of the movie, as this clip is famous for a very good reason, as that cracked me up. They catch a ride with the man who sings his heart out, and they stop to get something to eat, while Peter is against it, but remember, everybody has to eat at some point, and the man comes back out and ditches them until Peter steals the car and gives the man a black eye and drive off with it and picks up Ellie, which is a good romance at its finest. Alexander meets King Wesley despite he doesn't like him all that much, and Ellie sees it in the newspaper while Peter and Ellie stay at a motel without paying the bill, and his mother is a suspect about it. And as they get in the room, Ellie is not looking forward to reuniting with King Wesley, and Peter will get his story, and they look like they're not looking forward to separating from one another either, as they seem like they really love each other based on their acting, and it works so much. Peter leaves the room and drives to his workplace and writes a story and tells her boss this romantic story, and he leaves it while the motel management comes to their room and kicks Ellie out and forces her to go to the police station while he's in New York to publish the story, as Ellie is found by the policeman. And Alexander and King Wesley go to wherever Ellie is at, and Peter doesn't make it back to her on time as he sees she's with Alexander and King Wesley. And his engine blows up on him, and Ellie goes back to being the rich girl she is, and she goes back to marrying King Wesley, which made me feel bad for Peter at this point in the film. Ellie is planned to remarry King Wesley, while Alexander tells Ellie he never lied to King Wesley, as she's devastated about how Peter left her to begin with, as she believes he despises her, and his father, and her father, when really it's not true, until she learned he wanted their money after all, which can be selfish of Peter. And King Wesley enters the room, and Peter is invited to the wedding between Peter and Ellie, and Peter meets with Alexander about the billings that happened during their trip and doesn't want the reward money of $10,000, but he wants the money that he owes other places. And Alexander asks Peter if he loves her, until eventually he says yes, and has an encounter with Ellie, and he doesn't want to see her ever again, nor she to him. And the wedding begins, and the next day Alexander says to Ellie she doesn't have to marry King Wesley if she doesn't want to, as he also says Peter loves her, as he only asked for the charges during the trip. And before she gets married for certain, she runs to the car and drives away, and she gets to Peter as they're in Michigan. And the movie ends, and the climax was a very nice, happy ending to a very good romance movie. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. I like the romance, as it's a great romance for a romantic comedy, and where do we get those anymore? And great filmmaking at its finest, and I really wanted Peter and Ellie to get together by the end of the film, as the editing did switch cameras at different times, but it was the 1930s, what do you expect? The writing is very good, and the acting is well done by Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, and there were times it was making me laugh in a ha-ha kind of way, as this movie was funny at times, and I had a good time with the romance, as Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert have chemistry, as it was beautiful to watch them on screen. And this is a great romantic comedy with the story, as it works to this day, as it works so much. So this is a solid recommendation, particularly the clip from the movie where Claudette Colbert sticking her leg on the road is a famous clip for a reason, as this movie is iconic for it, and I really like the movie quite a bit. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with From Here to Eternity, and until then, it's time to hitchhike.